Hello and welcome back to The Final Gentleman. My name is Justin Jeffers. Joining me here today, we have Nick Harris from Orion Watches. He's the designer, owner, and founder of that brand. But we're not going to talk about Orion Watches much today. But since Nick himself is not just a watch enthusiast, but he is also a watchmaker and went to watchmaking school for 2 years and services watches, I thought it'd be really great to talk to him about some pressing topics that I hear about floating around the forums, on YouTube, on blogs, and that is watch winders. Some people say they are amazing, some people say they are terrible, they're unnecessary, some people say it's personal choice, it depends on the watch, but not many of these people are actually watchmakers such as yourself, or they haven't been trained in watchmaking or watch servicing. Nick, I want to get your take on watches,
Sure.
Watch winders.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a multi-layered question, but
Okay.
just up front, watch winders are kind of like keeping your car in idle.
Mm-hmm.
If your car is serviced and functioning properly, idling it isn't gonna damage it. It'll wear it down. You'll need to get the oil replaced sooner, but it's just running. That's what it's supposed to do. But if your car is damaged and you're running and idling a damaged car, it's going to make that damage worse.
Okay.
And the same is true with watches.
That's fair.
So if you've got a damaged watch and you stick in a winder, or it needs to be serviced, or the oil is dry or gone, it's going to make the damage a lot worse.
Okay.
Otherwise, it might shorten marginally a service interval.
Mm-hmm. So maybe instead of 6 years, it's 5.5 years.
Something like that. Yeah. There's that, for another car analogy, there's that story about that guy who, buys the new Audi and is, he has to take it in to get serviced. He's like, how come my wife's car doesn't, she got the same car as me, she never has to take it in to get serviced. And it's like, well, dude, you're ripping around 0 to 80 every opportunity you get. So, wear habits and wear patterns are, those are true for watches too.
Okay.
And putting a watch on a winder, that's running it, and that's gonna, it's gonna wear it down. Mm-hmm. Some watches, depending on condition, will wear slower and faster.
Okay. But it's not going to necessarily ruin the watch. I mean, if it's already in bad shape, it may exacerbate that. But, let's say I have a watch, a brand new watch, or a vintage watch that just got serviced and it's in good shape, it's running well, there's no cause for concern. Is it bad to have that watch on a watch winder? I mean, aside from maybe marginally shortening the service interval time, but anything else?
I would say it's not bad for it to be on the winder.
Okay.
Though I think you would want to go with a high quality winder.
Yeah. Not one of those $30 things you'll find off of certain websites.
Right, because I'm not an electric kind of guy, but I think there are some with unshielded motors. I might be making
with the magnetics, so it can mess with the movement.
Have a magnetic field that is generated. So I think it's important to find a winder that's quality and won't magnetize your watch, because that's a bummer. Putting a watch on a winder and it magnetizes it, and then you have all sorts of problems that you may not, what's going on with the watch.
Are there any brands that you would feel comfortable recommending that either you have experience with or that you think are up to the level of quality that would be safe, or if there are none, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Or you just are not familiar with the space, that's also totally fine.
The winders I use are all the diagnostic and cyclomatic ones that are a little different than what watch enthusiasts
So I can't go buy that off Amazon?
No. And they cost they cost,
a lot.
$300 to $1,500, so it's a lot for a watch winder. But I hear Wolf winders are good.
Wolf. Swiss Cubit is another one I've heard is quite good.
Yeah. If you wanted to get a watchmaker one, you could get a Witchy one. I think they have one.
Okay.
Could get an Elma watch winder.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's probably one of those things where you don't skimp on it. Just, you want bidirectionality, you want different speeds, because if it doesn't go fast enough, it might not accrue any charge.
Yeah, so that's actually another thing I want to talk about, and thanks for bringing it up. Enjoy the ice cream. So you guys may be wondering, not to get too off topic, but why we have dessert here. For those that don't know, I am a sugar addict and a dessert addict. And in some of my segments, I will be eating croissants or ice cream, I think just for fun. And it just happens to be mid-afternoon right now.
This is amazing.
It is, especially when you spit it out on your pants. We are not going to edit that out, by the way.
Oh, no.
So I thought it'd be nice, since Nick, schlepped all the way in here from the suburbs. He came into the city, Philadelphia, that is. And I thought it'd be nice, since I was hosting him, to have some dessert, and I also needed to get my fix in for the day. So we have a baked Alaska here, which is what I like to say is an ice cream cake on steroids, typically done with more of a fruity ice cream flavor, like banana or pineapple. This is done with a hazelnut cake on the base, a coffee ice cream, and then a vanilla ice cream with a meringue on top. Now, some baked Alaskas, if you get them, they will actually torch them fireside in rum. A nice touch. This is obviously not what we did here because we didn't want to burn the building down. But anyways, so that's why we had dessert. But Nick, you started to bring up a point about bidirectionality, having different speeds on the watch winder. And can you tell us why that can be important? Because some watch winders, it may be a $300 watch winder, but it only goes one way and it only goes at a certain turns per day. Others, maybe $300, and you can do 300 to 1,200 turns per day, and it can go one direction, both directions. It can switch on and off. How important is all of that? And how do you know? Sorry.
Yeah.
One more kind of question. We can kind of work through these, but
Sure.
How do you know what your watch needs?
Of course. Well, I guess it kind of depends on your collection. Certain movements, all automatic movements are, or generally, almost all automatic movements are wound with a rotor, which is, or an oscillating weight, to be more technically correct. And this spins around the back.
Which
you might be able to
I can
see
hopefully show you guys on the back of this Calamity watch here, which is one of Nick's from Orion. So that rotor right there, that's what he's talking about. That's what rotates on the automatic watch.
Right. And that sends energy to the barrel where it winds the spring. Now, this watch, it doesn't matter which way
Beautiful watch, by the way.
you wind it. It goes both ways. But some watches, it can only generate that charge in one direction. And a good way to tell is if you kind of like spin your watch around, you don't really hear anything. But if you get one of the Hellcats or if you have a 7750 and you spin a watch, try the other way, and you really hear that rotor whirring and buzzing, like there's not a lot of resistance, that's a good indicator that you have a unidirectional winding rotor.
Because it's not actually like tightening that spring.
Right, it's just spinning on its bearing.
Okay.
Whereas in the other direction, it'll be winding and there will be more resistance. So it kind of depends on knowing beforehand what your watch is and what movement is powering it.
Okay.
But if you don't have access to that, I guess kind of a rudimentary trick might be kind of seeing if there's a difference.
And are most movements bidirectional? Are most movements, clockwise, counterclockwise, or newer movements are one and older movements are typically the other? I know there's probably no single rule of thumb, or certain brands, maybe Patek and Rolex are only clockwise, and Audemars Piguet is bidirectional. Are there kind of rules of thumb like that?
Not really.
Okay.
Generally, more movements are bidirectional than aren't.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those things that if you notice your watch isn't charging, you could always just switch the direction.
In terms of having different speeds of winding, is that because certain watches need to be wound a certain number of times per day, or is there something else at play there? Or the spring needs so much kind of spinning of the rotor to fuel its movement?
So I think there are a few things at play, and again, it depends on how the rotor actually ratchets and how it generates energy and how much energy it can generate versus how much energy it's losing. Because as the watch winds, the spring unwinds and that energy escapes through the escapement and into the balance wheel that spins. And then when the watch winds, that spring coils up and the oscillating weight has to go around. So if you have it going really slowly and you have a watch that, what if you have super high beat watch that has some unidirectional winding rotor and it's going really slowly and your winder's slow and it's just like not really getting enough energy to wind, that watch will spend more energy than it's generating, so to speak. So that's kind of also knowing what kind of movement you have. But also sometimes like you got to get that rotor spinning, and if it's going too slow, sometimes
it just won't keep the watch wound and it'll stop.
It just doesn't move.
Negates the whole purpose of having a watch winder.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So as we wrap up, any kind of final thoughts you have on watch winders? I mean, my summary and kind of my impression going in is you don't need one, but it can be nice to have sometimes. I personally have a moon phase watch, and I maybe only wear it 6-7 times a month, and I just don't even bother setting the moon phase. It's beautiful, and I think it's a really great functionality that this watch and many other watches have. It's very elegant. It's a little dressier, and some of the moon phases, the dials on some of the watches are beautiful, but I just don't take the time to set it.
Right.
And so that's a watch that I plan on getting a watch winder for, just to keep that going. And I think it'd be the same if you have an annual calendar or a perpetual calendar, maybe even like the watch that I have on today. Is a date day. It's a Tudor date day. It's basically the Tudor version of the Rolex Date 8. But even just having to set not only the date but also the day, it's just like one extra thing.
Right.
Is it a necessity? No. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's not a necessity. It's a nice to have. Many watches, as you may say, agree with me on this. They're not a necessity. They're a luxury. It's hard to justify spending thousands of dollars and sometimes even hundreds of dollars on a watch when functionally you get something for less expensive, and sometimes aesthetically you can get something that's very similar. So that's kind of my take. Is it's nice to have, as are most watches, frankly. And certain watches, I think it makes more sense to have.
Yeah, I think with some of those higher complications, the perpetuals, the annuals, the moon phases, and then some more of the calendar complications, they really do necessitate having a winder. I know some complications, they can only be reset by a watchmaker. So
it sounds incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. So I think, for those kinds of things, it makes more sense. And if you're looking at vintage stuff, you might not have a quick set date on your watch, and it kind of becomes a pain to go through your watch.
Yeah.
And set it each time.
Fair.
So it's mostly harmless, but you should know what you're getting into.
Okay.
I wouldn't throw a watch that has an unknown service interval into a winder. I wouldn't do any of that. But there are just a couple things to be mindful of. Generally harmless.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Great. Well, Nick, thanks for being here. Before we part ways with our audience, let's do a little quick watch check. I think you have your Orion 2 on, if you want to get it close to the camera. This is going to be coming out hopefully in the next few months. You can see the beautiful blue dial, the stainless steel band. I think it's very nice.
Yeah.
And then I have, like I said, my Tudor date day, once it decides to properly. There we go. I love this watch. Got it a few years ago, kind of before the vintage boom really hit. But Nick, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to go enjoy the rest of our baked Alaskas. And until next time, guys, I'm Justin Jefferson, the Final Gentleman. This is Nick Harris from Orion Watches. Feel free to hit the subscribe, the like button, follow myself on Instagram, Nick on Instagram. I'll put all the links down below. But thanks for watching, guys.
Take care.
I'm so excited.
Wait, hold on, dude.
I didn't want you to look.
Yeah, that's fine.